I'm Janiaya.
I'm Kel.
I'm Doug.
I'm Kiki.
And we're 4Change.
Woohoo! Unfortunately, our soundboard is broken, so I won't be able to play any fun little noises anymore. They banned us, I guess. But today, we're going to be diving into how to handle group conflict in a small group, which is kind of relevant for us because we've had a little bit of a conflict ourselves recently. We literally just finished talking about a conflict that we had. So this is a topic that we are learning about actively.
Outside of what happened with us, have you guys had any conflicts within your friend groups or something that you want to discuss?
Yeah, I've had on rugby teams competing for the same position. It can either bring people a lot closer together or draw people apart, and that comes into one of the 5 modes of conflict resolution. And I think a big one of that would be competing. Competing can have a positive and negative effect. Of competing makes both people do better. You're trying your hardest at what you were trying to compete for, and the only way to get better at something is to try your hardest and repetition. But it can also damage a relationship, I think, because there is only, for example, in my instance, there's only one jersey on the field for that position. And when the day comes when the number's called, if it's not you, you can look at it 2 ways. You can be supportive or you can be very negative about it. And I found that when he was picked over me, I was a little bit negative about it. And that carried on to my training and affected me in a negative way until I was able to realize at an older age that losing when you are competing isn't always the worst thing, because you realize more what you need to improve on than if you were picked and you get less feedback. So I think that's one thing I've kind of had in conflict resolution.
I mean, especially whenever you incorporate competition into a small group, like things are bound to get a little bit tough. Kiki, you're doing a job training right now, aren't you?
I am, yes.
Is it anything like that, or have you had experiences like that with your jobs in the past?
So I moved to a different section, but it's the same job. So in the past with that job, it's a small group of people, like 15 of us, and we're all living together the entire summer. So there was a lot of conflict, a lot. If you're living with a bunch of people that you don't know very well, you're sharing small spaces, 3 people in a room together, that causes a lot of conflict. I remember, for instance, one of them was a girl would frequently get takeout and then just leave it in the fridge and forget about it. But there were 20 boxes that were hers. All of them had her name on it, and she just left them there. And then when I confronted her, she was like, "Oh, I forgot about that." And then she got upset that I brought it up to her, and I was like, "You don't need to be sad. I'm not mad at you, but you do need to take care of your things."
20 boxes is crazy.
Yeah.
And did she plan on sharing any of it? Or
No.
Oh, dang. Okay.
And it was all she's gluten-free, so it's all gluten-free things. So
Would you say there was a stage of avoiding that problem before you handled it? Was there a space of time that obviously there was enough time to allow 20 boxes to build up in the fridge, but was there a part of you that didn't want to be the person to say take it out of the fridge?
I think it's different because, I wasn't really paying attention to that until the end of the summer when it was my job to clean the fridge. And then I noticed, I think not everybody used that fridge, so I think a lot of people really noticed it was there. And our job was we're getting up at 7 a.m. and we're not going back to those lodges until 11 p.m. So it's even if people did notice, they didn't really care until it got to the point where it's oh, well, now we have to deal with this because now we do have the time to. So I do think, I guess there was avoidance in a sense. We didn't care until it affected us more.
Did they end up cleaning it?
No, I did clean it for her, because she's such a sensitive person. She's really upset when we brought it up because she thought we were mad, and I was like, don't even worry, I already cleaned it up for you, just in the future, be a little more careful.
Definitely. Kels, you've been part of a small group?
I've been part of many before. Actually, I just recently had a conflict between another small group for class and it didn't involve me. I wasn't part of the members who were having a conflict, but it was definitely a eye opener to like some of the struggles that I have still with conflict management, because like I don't want to like tell people's business all around, but like one person came in and felt like they were being included in the conversation that me and somebody else was having. But really, it was just me kind of like hurriedly asking for clarification because I didn't understand what was going on. And instead of like turning to this next person to explain what was going on, we tried to like, we kept trying to figure out what was going on between the two of us for a minute. And it made that other person really upset. And so they popped off, and it caused this other person to pop off. And it was like, oh gosh, I'm kind of the triangle in this. I guess this is also something I need to work on too. Not just because like, you know, technically I was also like part of it, but it was also like, when I was trying to mediate between the two of them, I realized like, I'm terrified of confrontation. And that's, you know, it's also, it's always hard to figure out what type of conflict it is. Because like, you know, in class we talked about like conflicts of substance, conflicts of value, conflicts of process, and misperceived differences. I think that kind of what it was that like it was a conflict of process, and also everybody was just stressed out of their minds. And like because one friend felt like they weren't being listened to, they weren't being prioritized, and they felt like that should be something that is like a rule in our group, that you have to make people, like you have to explain what's going on. That's part of the process, that's part of how we get things done. And we just got so caught up in it, and we felt like we were trying to like just get something done quickly, and it's like, well, that can make people feel excluded. And, you know, especially when it's all in your finals week. Gosh, we're all so strung tight. Janiaya, do you have any experiences like that?
Yeah. Most of my like things are within my friend groups, and it's just people values not aligning, which in the textbook that's called conflict of values. But yeah, it's like when people are just like they don't know what they want, or they like want to do stuff different ways, and it doesn't really align with how everybody else wants to do it, and then everybody starts arguing. And me, when conflict happens, I like go silent because I don't know how to deal with that, and I get really awkward, or I just start crying. So I try to avoid conflict as much as possible, which I know isn't good, but yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's, you know, an unnatural thing to be a little bit, you know, afraid of conflict, because I feel like, you know, us being social animals, we are all afraid of, you know, upsetting the balance, disturbing the peace. But, you know, ultimately conflict is necessary and can be a really healthy and good thing. Dougie, what do you think you struggle with most when there's like a conflict?
Probably avoiding and not being assertive enough to the problem. In a lot of cases, I like to try and let things figure out itself, which isn't always a good way, I guess. But I think one thing I'm really trying to develop into my personal life is being more assertive to these things, because I can notice a problem in advance before it happens when there's small things lingering. But it's having I don't know if it's the courage or the attitude to be assertive enough to address it before it becomes a big problem within the group. How about yourself?
Oh, for me, it's definitely the conflict avoidance. I'm always afraid of making people upset, making people feel disappointed. And, like, you know, that's not healthy for anybody. If you just go, at a problem, obviously it won't change. How do you feel about that, Kiki?
I have like a skewed view on certain types of conflict. Like some conflict I feel like is just unnecessary and I won't entertain it. But other conflict I do think is necessary, and it really depends who it is, what the situation is. Usually I can handle it with a pretty level head. and I just want to like hear the other side and like get my side out as well. But I do feel like in certain situations, like if it's like my parents or my brother, like I'm just gonna be angry because it's like, you know, that's my family. And I'm like very close with them. So if it's just like a stupid conflict, then I'm like, sometimes I just feel like annoyance in those moments. But if it's like a professional conflict, I feel like I can, you know, kind of be like, well, I'm not close with these people. Like I don't know them. So I'm not going to get mad until I need to, if I need to, you know.
You know, like I said before, I try to avoid it as much as possible. But if I'm faced with it, I'll try my best to, you know, hear them out and stuff. But sometimes, like what Kiki said, if it's stupid, I'm gonna get annoyed. Like, don't come into my face with some dumb stuff. But yeah.
Would you guys say that you have like, because we've all heard about like the responses to like fear. There's fight, flight, freeze, and there's also fawn. I don't know. Have you guys heard of that one? Fawn is essentially like when you try to like if you feel like you're threatened by somebody, you will try to like do whatever you can to make sure that they don't hurt you, like in a like either begging, either trying to like win them over, like that kind of thing. What do you guys feel like you respond to fear with out of the options?
Probably fight.
Your fight? Yeah.
Probably fight. I think, I mean, fear in small groups is a little bit different, but if it's just a fear of everyday life, definitely fight. And I think I try and take that into everyday life, like try and address the problem. I know that kind of contradicts what I said before, but that's what I'm trying to do now, is I guess fight the problems, kind of get in its face before it happens almost. So, yeah, fight.
I'm definitely a fawn kind of guy. I'm a fawn, and I think it depends on the situation a little bit, but normally it's fawn and normally it's freeze. I will avoid something if it makes me anxious, even when I know it should make me anxious and I shouldn't avoid it. That's still part of it for me. But what about you, Janiaya?
Yeah, I'm either gonna leave or freeze. I don't actually. I'd probably leave. Just leave it and avoid it.
I think for me it's very situational. Like certain things, I'm flight. Just like if it's causing me anxiety and I don't need to do it, and it's not gonna necessarily benefit me if I do it, then I'm not gonna do. Like I'm just gonna avoid it. Like I don't need to do it then. But if it's something that will benefit me if I do it, even if it's scary, then I will. Like that'd be more like fight on that one. Yeah, so I think for me it's just really situational.
Well, do you guys want to talk about our sources?
I went with a source. It was Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument known as TKI, and it's kind of what I've been talking about a little bit of noticing problems before they come, I guess. And that's kind of where I've really got like the assertiveness word from, that's part of it being assertive, is that the first stage of, so background, this guy's, I guess, a professional on small groups and stuff, and he's done a lot of research into it, and his theory of how to best work in a small group is that if a problem occurs, is to be assertive to the problem and then be cooperative after the problem, to solve the problem together. And like the stage of in between that is what he really focuses on, because that's the hardest part, is for everyone to agree what the problem is and to find a way to cooperate together and solve the problem. And I thought it was a really, really good source actually for reading for what we've been learning about this week. But Janiaya, what was your source?
Mine was from Harvard, and it was basically talking about like the different conflict styles and stuff. Sorry. And it was basically like saying how instead of trying to win an argument, you should try to like all work together to figure out what you all want and understand each person's needs and stuff.
Do we go next?
Yeah, go ahead.
I looked at this a chapter from this book called Conflict Resolution: A Foundation Guide by Susan Stewart. It's dealing a lot with cross-cultural differences, and because I'm a history nerd, I immediately kind of zeroed in on the section kind of talking about the Northern Ireland conflict, because this was like this book was written around the time that the conflict was still like actively happening. And one of the things it talks about is like there's this long history of colonization in Ireland by the English and by kind of like the forces of England, and a lot of the conflict is kind of characterized by a unwillingness by the English to acknowledge their role in colonization. And I think that like it kind of is a lesson that can be applied more broadly. It's like, in order for any kind of conflict to be resolved, like you have to acknowledge the pain you might have caused. You have to be able to own up to your mistakes. And I feel like that's especially important in like, in this time where I feel like everybody complains about cancel culture a lot, but it's like, if you are willing to say, no, yeah, that was a messed up thing that I did and I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry that I hurt you and I understand if you don't want to like support me anymore. I feel like that's a much healthier attitude to like most conflicts. If you feel like, wait, yeah, I probably did mess up, but like, it's just, you can apologize for things and grow. And if that's something that somebody else wants to hold against you, you can't, they're allowed to do that. But that doesn't mean that like, it's okay to pretend you've never done anything wrong, Kiki, what'd you find in your source?
So mine is from the Journal of Organizational Culture, Communications, and Conflict. And basically what it said is that effective conflict resolution can significantly influence the culture of your small group, and getting through those conflicts can foster a culture of transparency and mutual respect among the members, and also create a stronger relationship, which I found very interesting.
Is there anything in particular that you like learned from that, or anyone in particular like learned from your source, like that you might want to like apply to this group or to groups in the future?
I think maybe going back to my source, cooperating directly impacts group cohesion and relational satisfaction. This is what I found as a quote from my text I thought I kind of highlighted for our group. And the groups foster cooperative norms, are better positioned to engage constructive conflict rather than destructive or avoidant conflict patterns. So I think it is just being positive to a problem and talking about it early and realizing that there is a problem and finding a cooperative way to overcome the problem and come out on the better side. Can you think of a time when a conflict led to a positive outcome and what made it work? And I think we can use today as an example of being that our time management wasn't on floor or on par with what we needed, and realizing that everyone has stuff going on in their lives. And I think the positive outcome of that is going into next week and working on our final. I'm excited for it, and I believe that we will have no problems moving forward. So I think that's a good closing point if anyone has anything to touch on to that.
Yeah, I feel like it also allowed us to be able to like, I don't know, feel more comfortable expressing in the future if we need anything after that. So yeah.
Because like I know that for me, I fumbled a little bit by not communicating as much as I should have, by not like telling you guys where I was at. And I think that's something I've been working on, but it's obviously something that still needs work. And it's something that reminds you like, oh yeah, even when you are in your rough spot for whatever reason, it's still really important to think about the people around you, because it's not some shameful thing to need help. And I'm always trying to tell myself that, but it's still a work in progress. And people aren't going to look down on you for needing help, or at least anyone who's worth your time won't look down on you for needing help. And, ultimately I feel like me being willing to be like, hey, I messed up, made like, there wasn't any like hackles up. So it made it easier for, this is my perspective, it made it easier for Kiki to be like, hey, this time didn't really work out for me, and I feel like we're putting ourselves in a lot of stress. So it's like, oh, okay, well that's like an easy fix, or like a possible solution. It's always important to be willing to go, yeah, I messed up, but
I think our conflicts that we had, the fact that we were able to talk about it, I think it did us a great service. I think that moving forward, we'll do better. The stress will be less for everybody. And I think it was handled really good, at least in my opinion. Like, even just walking here with Janiaya and Kel, I feel like we all just like started talking about like random things, and like we were back to like being fine. And I feel like that's, we could easily, you know, hang on to like those things that frustrated us. And, you know, Kel could be offended and not want to talk, but I feel like we all handled it very maturely, and we were able to like move on and like realize that nobody's mad at each other. Like, we're all fine, and everything like will be fine. So
It also helped us realize that like the culture of like asking a professor for help is somewhat foreign, or like it can be culturally specific. Because like I didn't realize until like halfway through, like, oh wait, yeah, that means something different. I think, or at least that's what it came off as. Is like whenever you go to a professor, you're gonna get scolded. You know what I mean? Let me know if I'm wrong on that.
Not necessarily you get scolded. It's just in the UK it's a negative look. But that is what I was talking to Professor Davis about, or Dr. Davis about. I guess as the UK and the US is very similar culture, but there's subcultures in those cultures, and that is something that I'm managing and learning on the way through. And I think from where I was 3 years ago to where I am now is a drastic change in the good way. So, yeah.
I'm proud of us, I think.
Yeah, well done.
I'm Janiaya.
I'm Kel.
I'm Doug.
I'm Kiki.
And we're 4Change. Well, thank you for listening to our podcast. Yay.